28th chapter of the book of Acts. It's the final chapter. We only, after today, we have one lesson left in the book of Acts. We will have finished it, gone all the way through. It took 2 years. But we went through verse by verse, checked everything out. We thoroughly understand the disciples, the apostles, what they went through, Paul's journey, what everything meant. And then we'll be looking through the book of Revelation next. So Paul has finally gotten to Rome. And he's been trying to get here for a long time. He thought he was going to get there a different way. In fact, he kind of bragged about it to the Romans. He said, once I visit Spain, then I'm going to come by and I'm going to stop by Rome and minister there. Now, he was right in that God wanted him to go to Rome, but he was totally wrong in how God was going to get him there, and that's how we are. Sometimes God will speak to us, give us a vision, then we construct how we think God's going to work it out. And we start following that path. But God has a whole other way of getting us there. So when things don't work out the way we think they should work out, sometimes we think we're heading in the wrong direction. Maybe that's not why it's not working out. But in reality, you could be heading in the right direction. God's just using a different path to get you there. So now let's talk about this opening. I wrote many are called, but few. What's the rest of that? Are chosen. What do we think that means? Many are called, but few are chosen. Yes, sir?
There are more unsaved people than there are saved people.
What does it mean to be chosen? Well, so many are called. Many are called. Few are chosen. So we think that it's about the task. That God calls everybody, but He doesn't call them to do a task, and He calls a few people to do a task. Many are called, but few are chosen. So that, yes?
I mean, everybody's called.
Yes.
But few are chosen to do a certain thing for a ministry.
So that means if you're not chosen to do a certain thing for God, you don't have to do anything because you're not.
No, I didn't say it. We all called.
But if only if you are chosen, if that's what the chosen means, like you're chosen to do a specific thing, that means these other people aren't chosen to do a specific thing. Wait, I know. I'm calling you last. Keep calling me. Yes, sir.
Many are called,
Yes.
but few do what God wants them to do.
So you're thinking that word chosen just means few are obedient.
Exactly. Few are obedient.
That might be it. We'll see in just a little bit. I know you, man. I call him last because I want people to think you're going to give away the answer too quick. That might be it.
Many are called, but few are chosen. Those that are chosen have a gift.
Right, now that's what we normally think. That a few people have a gift, but that would mean that the called don't have a gift. We're just saying just a few have a gift.
Yes, a few have a gift.
But that means that I can be called Ollie.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, yes, sir. I think you're talking to Mary. Good morning. So we want to say, define what the call is.
Define like the call that I told Pastor I can do something, I can do this job because of my handicap. Pastor said, I have a job at a place where I'm not going to party or let you go out cooking the sanctuary.
Okay, so when Jesus said, yes, ma'am. called to be saved, but only a few people are called to serve,
No, everybody's supposed to serve.
then he would say many are called and many are chosen.
No, everybody's called. They call once to be saved.
Yes.
They call the second time to serve, but they don't answer the call. The ones that's chosen are the ones that answer the call.
So the one who are the chosen means you answered,
Yeah.
or the chosen means you're obedient.
Yeah.
So here's the parable. If you would ask me, I could have solved this 10 minutes ago. Yes, sir.
Another word you can use, you can call, you accept the call.
Right. Only a few people actually accept the call.
Yes.
And he's using the word chosen for that.
Yes.
Right, okay. So they said when we were talking about, we've always used this phrase, we've heard the phrase, Jesus said, many are called, but few are chosen. And we're trying to know, what does that mean? Because sometimes we get different meanings to it. But we kind of think that the call goes out to everybody, but when it says few are chosen, that he actually means few are obedient or few accept the call. But the call goes to everybody. And once you accept the call, you are then called the chosen. Okay. So here's the parable that Jesus told right before he said that. He said that a man was having a wedding feast. His son was getting married. And so he sent out a call to everybody to come to it. No one showed up. He sent out a call to his family, his friends, just the normal people that should have showed up. They didn't show up. So then he sent his servants out to compel people, please come to this wedding. And they beat up the servants instead of coming to the wedding feast. So then he told his servants, no longer go to family and friends. Go to strangers, go to foreigners, just go to anybody you can. People who normally would not be considered invited, and compel them to come, and they did come. So the original people did not answer the call, but then he had to send it out to other people. And when you get to the wedding, Jesus doesn't say this part, but it's implied. They have a wedding garment for you. So you know how people like to match. We love to match. What are our colors for that day? So we can all match. That, in the Jewish tradition, they used to do that. When you came to their wedding, they would put you in the robes, the colors that of the bride and groom. So everybody would match. One person, when the master got there, had refused to put on that robe. So he had him kicked out. Because you're here, but you're still not doing what I asked you to do. So it's not enough to show up to church. You still have to be obedient. God's not interested in your body just occupying the pew. Have you actually put on the robe? And are you doing what I asked you to do? Then he said, many are called, but few are chosen. And he's saying, see, the call went out to everybody, but only a few actually answered the call. So it doesn't mean that God chooses those. He calls them the chosen because they have chosen to be obedient.
That part. That part.
You would like to add anything?
Well, I would add to that.
Yes, sir.
That Jesus was specifically
Yes, sir.
talking about Genesis.
Yeah, and I'm going to get there. So the way we apply that today for us, is that we preach to everybody, but only a few people are actually going to respond to it. And we would call those the chosen. Today we would call those the chosen, not because God's choosing who's going to be saved and who's not, but they're actually choosing eternal life. So the call goes out to everybody, but the chosen are those who have chosen to respond to the call. So back in Jesus' day, I hear this person really loud.
Yeah.
Because of my hearing. So you can shut it out. Something's wrong with my ears. I can't. I hear all sounds equally. Even all in the kitchen, I hear him just as loud as the person right there. I have weird ears. So in Jesus' day, he was called first to the Jews. that's who God chose to be the carriers of his word to the rest of the world. He didn't choose them to save them. The call goes out to everybody, but these people he chose specifically, you're going to carry my word, my message to the rest of the world. So when Jesus showed up and said, hey, I'm the fulfillment, many of them rejected him. And so he is talking to the Jews. When we get into the book of Revelations, a lot of things that we have interpreted about us. If you've heard any end-time teaching about the end of the world and the rapture of the church and all that, a lot of that has been interpreted that Jesus' words or John's words in the book of Revelation are about us. And it's not, they're about the Jews. So if you've heard any teaching on it, it's going to frustrate you when I teach it the real way, because it's going to be so different from what you've heard. If you've heard no teaching on it, you'll be so happy because there'll be no confusion. But the confusion comes because we interpret a lot of what Jesus said to be about us. But like he's saying, it was really about the Jews. Okay, so in the book of Acts, Paul is making his final plea to the Jews. Judgment is just about to come on the nation of Israel. They're just about to be judged. In about 10 years, the Romans are going to invade Jerusalem. They're going to destroy the temple. They're going to kill all the Jews. In some cases, some of the Jewish people were trying to hide their jewelry and stuff because they came in, they ransacked their houses. They swallowed their jewelry. The Romans tracked them down and slit them open and took the jewelry back. So a horrible tragedy is about to happen. Judgment is about to come on Israel. They're about to decimate it. And this is Paul and Jesus keep pleading to them, to Israel, to turn and to listen. And Paul's making one of his final pleas to the Jews in the last chapter of Acts 28, still trying to convince them that the call has gone out to you and please don't turn your back on it. So he's finally gotten to Rome. You probably don't know what happened in Rome. In Rome, the Jews who got saved were fighting with the Jews who weren't saved. And there was such fighting about tradition because the Jews who were saved means we no longer, they used to go in the temple and sacrifice animals. Do they need to do that anymore? Because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. So things that they had been doing for 500 years, for 1,000 years, Jesus says you no longer have to do that. God said, I definitely told you to do it, but now I'm doing a new thing. The people who were used to doing the old thing got mad because once you have your tradition, you got it. That's my tradition. Mama did it, grandmama did it, great-granddaddy did it, and how dare you take my tradition away? And so even though Jesus said, now I'm about to do a new thing, they didn't want to change. You got the old Jews still doing the old traditions, and the new Jews who become Christians. They were fighting so much, and again, we would never fight in the church. You would never go to a business meeting and see people fighting. Thank God we've been all saved, right? But they would actually fight in church and get mad and scream. And so the emperor came. I'm good. So the emperor came and kicked all the Jews out. So the only people who were left were the Gentile Christians. But all the Jews had to leave. Finally, the Jews were allowed to return. That emperor died who had done that. Finally, the Jews were allowed to return. And so Paul is on his way to Rome, and he wants to talk to those Jews and give them their last chance. Judgment is coming. We're funny. We're not warned. You can warn people, Pastor. You need to change your ways. Judgment is coming. And people don't listen. And then judgment comes, and they're so unclear how this happened. And I've seen people warn, you've got to change. You need to forgive. You need to stop being so angry. You need to stop. And people they won't change. So today, in our midst,
That's right.
in our midst. So when we look back at the Jews, we think, well, they're stupid. Why would we not change? Paul's warning that we still do the same thing today. We hear the same warnings. They just thought, that's just Paul. And their people go, that's just the pastor. But each ministry gift has a specific anointing on it. So if my pastor says something to me, even in passing, if my pastor happens to walk by and go, oh, you know that job? I think you should do that. And then walks on, I listen, because I know that that's his actual gift, that that's a way that God communicates about certain things in my life. And so to ignore, the teacher has a certain gift, the prophet has a certain gift, even a righteous man has a certain, everybody has certain gifts. But as far as changing a big thing coming in your life, that is one of the ways that God speaks, is through the pastor gift. So when we just go, if you don't like his suits, or if you don't like, oh, he's too short, or whatever, whatever but none of that has to do with how God might anoint him.
Right,
Does that make sense?
right.
So we ignore certain things to our peril, and they're just going, oh, that's just Paul, that's just Paul. But 10 years from now, from when Paul's, they're all massacred. Yes, ma'am.
I be feeling like people think they have a lot of time. I don't have to change today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But God says in the Word, you neither know the time nor the day.
Right, and if God sent, you're so right. And if God sent someone to you to warn you, there's a reason for that. There's an urgency to it.
Right.
If somebody, you know what, I just feel like I need to say this to you. You should take that information in. Think, well, that might be God. And if it's that important that the Spirit of God fell on somebody so that they would come up to me and say this to me, I need to listen. I think that's how I look at it.
Right.
But most people, many are called, but few choose to listen.
Right.
Okay, so Paul is in Rome and he's deciding, I'm going to give these Jews one last chance. They're not going to listen because it's Paul, and they don't really expect it. Acts chapter 28, verse 16. The second part of verse 16.
Now when we came to Rome, the centurion delivered the prisoners to the captain of the guard, but Paul was permitted to dwell by himself with the soldier who guarded him.
So Paul was permitted to dwell by himself with the soldier who guarded him. So Paul lived in his own apartment, but he's chained to a soldier. So you can imagine that. And every 4 hours they would put in a new soldier. This should be a hardship on Paul. When he has to go to the bathroom, the soldier has to go with him.
Wow.
Whatever he did when he eats, they have to eat together. It's 24 hours a day. I told you that when I took a group of students up to San Francisco to sing, my gospel choir, when I was a high school teacher, we went up there. 2 boys who weren't in my gospel choir, we needed them to go with us because 2 other boys had dropped out and we'd already paid for the tickets and everything. Who wants to go and who will buy these tickets? And they will go, and they were a mess. So I bought 2 dog leashes and clipped one to my belt, onto my belt, and then clipped it onto them. And we were never, it kind of stretches out. I would sit at one table to eat, and they could sit with their friends over there. We all went to the bathroom together.
Right.
They slept in their jeans, so did I. We lived together. Because
They were a mess.
they were bad. But this is what Paul's going through. And so he should be frustrated and upset. Why did God send me here? I'm so upset. I'm so mad. Now I'm chained, But he had a different attitude. It actually turned out that it was the soldiers who were upset. Because Paul would witness to them for that entire time over there. So let's look at Paul's attitude about it. He wrote letters to the Philippians, to the Ephesians, the Colossians, and to Timothy while he was in jail in Rome. So here's what he said to the Philippians about his being prisoner. Philippians chapter 1, verse 12 through 14.
But I want you to know, brethren, that the things which happened to me have actually turned out for the furtherance of the gospel, so that it has become evident to the whole Polish Guard and all the rest that can change are in Christ.
Right, so I want you to know that this is great. So this is his attitude. We never have this attitude. Why did this happen to me? Paul said, you know what? This is actually further the gospel. Because, and not just me, the whole palace guard. I'm witnessing to the whole palace guard. This is great that this happened to me. Instead of being upset that he's in jail, he's thinking, God's doing this for good. Because all things work together for good to them who love the Lord. Right, that's his attitude. This is for good. In fact, he wrote that to the Romans, and now God was making him live it. So, the whole palace guard is getting witnessed to. Here's what he wrote to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9 and 10. Someone else read it.
For which I suffer trouble as an evildoer, even to the point of chains, but the word of God is not chained.
Right. I'm in chains because God's word is in chains. So that's the attitude. I'm in the hospital, but God's word I'm in the hospital, so I'm a witness to this nurse, the doctor while I'm here. Right. That should be our attitude, whatever situation we're in, instead of being, church, pray for me, I get out of the situation. No, church, pray for me that I've been used in this situation.
All right.
Help me, Lord, to stay in the situation as long as you meet me here. Because I'm a threat to the devil as long as I'm here. That should be the attitude. Not, Lord, get me out of this. Lord, show me why I'm here so I can do some good while I'm here. Even though I'm here unjustly. That's okay. Here's what he said to the Ephesians in chapter 6, verse 20. Yeah, go ahead.
For which I
am
am
an ambassador, and I lost my place.
in chains.
That in it I may speak boldly as I ought to.
So pray, I'm an ambassador in chains. I'm an ambassador in chains. So even though I'm here in chains, I'm an ambassador for Christ. And in it, pray that while I'm here, that I may speak boldly. Here's what he said in the first part of that thing in Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 18, the first part of verse 18.
Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit.
So he's telling them, pray for me while I'm in the situation. Pray with all kinds of prayer and pray in the Spirit. Amen. Pray with all kinds of prayer and also pray in the Spirit.
Amen.
Praying with all prayer, that means all kinds, and supplication in the Spirit. So there's prayer and supplication, and I don't have time to go over it, but in some of the Bible studies we talk about the 7 different types of prayer. Supplication is one type of prayer where you're making your petitions made known to God. Like Jesus, Lord, if it's possible, please remove these chains. However, there's a prayer of submission where you're saying, however, not my will, but yours be done. So those are two different things. Telling God what you want, but then also submitting to his will. So those are two different types of prayer. But he says pray with all kinds of prayer and pray in the Spirit. The Ephesians understood when he's saying praying in the Spirit that he means praying in tongues. I'm just going to go through this quickly. In Acts chapter 19, verse 1 and verse 6. Someone else read.
And thereafter, while Apollos was at Corinth, Paul, having passed through the upper regions, came to Ephesus, and finding some disciples.
So while Apollos was in Corinth, Paul went to Ephesus. And interestingly, they had switched. Apollos had been in Ephesus first, Paul had been in Corinth, and they crossed paths. And while Apollos went to Corinth, now Paul is in Ephesus. So he walks into Ephesus and he runs into some disciples. Here's what happens when he ran into those disciples. He prayed for them. And 5 verses later, it says in verse 6,
and when Paul had laid hands on them, the Holy Spirit came upon them, and they spoke with tongues and prophesied.
So the Ephesians church, when it started, when he laid hands on them, they spoke with tongues and prophesied. So when he says pray in the Spirit, he's talking about praying in tongues. We know that because in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 14 and 15, it says,
For if I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays, but my understanding is...
So the only time it says that your spirit can pray, is if you're praying in tongues. If I pray in tongues, my spirit prays. But my understanding, like I don't know what I'm saying, but my spirit knows what it's saying. Because the Holy Spirit's inside of me, he's talking to God. But my mind, normally I pray just with my mind. I say, okay, Lord, I want... But if I pray in tongues, that's when my spirit is praying. Go on.
What is the conclusion then? I will pray with the Spirit, and I will also pray with understanding.
So he says, I'm going to do both. I'm going to pray in the Spirit, and I'm going to pray with my understanding. I'm praying in the Spirit, I'm praying in understanding. I'm going to do both. So when Paul tells the Ephesians, pray with all kinds of prayer in the Spirit, you know what he's talking about. So now let's go on to what he says. We're just look at the whole thing. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 18 through 20.
Being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints, and for me.
He said, pray for me.
That utterance may be given to me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador.
So he's telling them, I want you to pray in the Spirit and pray for me so that I can be bold and make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I'm an ambassador in chains. You don't know what's going on here. You don't know what I'm encountering. So pray in the Spirit too for me that God will give me utterance. So Paul is in jail saying, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. I need to take advantage of this opportunity. I'm here. It's not the way I thought I would get here, but I'm here. And so I know God's going to use me. God's going to use me. Any questions? We're good? Okay. Now, so Acts chapter 28, verse 17.
And it came to pass after 3 days that Paul called the leaders of the Jews together.
So he waited 3 days because he'd just been shipwrecked, bitten by a snake. Well, he wasn't bitten by a snake. Almost drowned. Been in an island in Malta. Been lost at sea for months. He finally gets to Rome. He took a break for 3 days. Didn't say that to anybody. Said, I'm going to take some me time.
That's right.
And just relaxed.
Right.
Finally, after 3 days, he's like, whoo, okay. Now we're going to call these Jews in and witness to them. Because this is their last shot. This is it. God's about to turn his back. And we'll discuss why. Why God has continued to give Jews a shot and another chance. Okay, so the leaders of the Jews came together. Go ahead, Lisa.
So when they had come together, he said to them, Men and brethren, though I have done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans.
So he's slick. Now these are not Jewish Christians, these are Jews. But he's saying to them, you know, I've done nothing against our people and our customs. So he's identifying with them. He's not saying against you. He's trying to, I'm one of you. I'm a Jew. I'm one of us, and I really didn't do anything against us. That's a good way to get people on your side. Some people need to try that sometime.
That's right.
And not always say, you people, your group, you need to say our church.
That's right.
Our pastor, our fellowship, right? Let's all own it. And that's a good way to let people know you're on their side. And then you can say, we should fix this or fix that because it's ours. Instead of you should fix this and fix that, you broke it. So Paul's smart. That's why he got so many people saved. So even though I did nothing against our people or the customs of our father, they delivered me as a prisoner from Jerusalem to the hands of Romans. Go on, verse 18.
Who then they had examined me, wanted to let me go, because there was no cause for putting me to death.
So the Romans wouldn't let me go because I hadn't done anything.
Right.
Yeah, go on.
But when the Jews spoke against it, I was compelled to appeal to Caesar. Not that I had anything of which to accuse my nation.
Right. And so when they wouldn't let me go, I was forced to appeal to Caesar. I was supposed to, okay, then let me talk to Caesar. Not because I was going to go to Caesar and say anything against our nation. That was not my purpose. I was just trying to save my life. Even though I hadn't done anything, the Jews wanted to see me dead. So that's why I appealed to Caesar. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to bring you down or to accuse you of anything. I was just trying to save my life. Go ahead. Verse 20.
For this reason, therefore, I have called for you to see you and speak with you, because for the hope of Israel, I am bound with this chain.
Now that meant something to them. Ooh, the hope of Israel. He said, the only reason I'm bound with this chain is because of the hope of Israel. So here's what they're referring to. In Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 8, they begin to call the Messiah who was coming the hope of Israel. Someone read that. Jeremiah 14, verse 8.
Oh, the hope of Israel, the Savior in time of trouble. Why should we be like a stranger in the land and like a traveler who turns aside to tarry for a night?
So, oh Savior, when you come to rescue us, why should you be like somebody who's only here for one day? Like this, a stranger or somebody who's just, we shouldn't treat you like a guest. We do that with Jesus. We welcome him into the church at 11 o'clock and then we kick him out at 1.
Right.
And then we go about our lives again until Sunday again. Come on in, Holy Spirit. Oh, we're so glad you're here. We're going to act so good for you for 2 hours and pray, and I'm going to love my brother and sister. And then when church is out, when I get in the parking lot, then I'm going to go back to my normal life and be mad at this person and cuss out my boss, you know.
Right.
And so we treat him like a stranger. We invite him in to, I used to always say, if my mother followed me around 24 hours a day, I'd have to act different.
Right.
Because she's there.
That's right.
So I'd have to talk differently to certain people and stuff like that. But she was always with me. You know, wouldn't you? If mama was just, you know, followed you to school. As a school teacher, we had this little trick. When a child would act up, we would just quietly call the parent. And then the next day, the parent just happened to be sitting in the classroom. And that kid who was crazy suddenly had this good behavior.
Yeah.
It was like, how did that happen? Because now mama's there and mama's going to jump on you if you act ugly like the teacher said you acted yesterday. Yes,
There's
sir.
a theory called that in sociology. It's called the Hawthorne effect.
The Hawthorne effect.
Yeah, when somebody's watching you,
Right.
the behavior is good.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't think that God is watching us 24 hours a day. Thank God he only lives in the church. And he specifically lives in the pulpit right around where the preacher preaches. That's where God really lives. And so women can't walk up to there because God doesn't like women, I guess. And so, but that's where he lives. He only lives there. And if you're just doing the announcements, you can do the announcements from a different place because God's not there.
Right.
God's only over there. So I can announce about the car wash, but I can't do it from like, you know, the center because God lives there and God doesn't know what a car wash is.
Right.
So we know where God is, and then I can be in the back of the pew on my phone texting people. You won't believe what happened because God's not back in the pew; He can't see me. God can only see what the preacher sees. Isn't that good? That's convenient for us. So they say, why should we treat you like a stranger and like a traveler who just turns aside for one night? You're the hope of Israel. You're the hope of Israel. We shouldn't treat you that way. So when Paul said, it was only because of the hope of Israel that I'm here, that hit the Jews, because they knew what he was talking about. You're talking about the Messiah coming and how we should treat him. So here's how they responded to that. Acts chapter 28, verse 21 through 24.
Then they said to him, we neither received letters from Judea concerning you, nor have any of the brethren who came reported or spoken any evil of you.
They're lying.
Straight up.
Now don't forget, when Paul got off the boat, people came from Rome to meet him. People came from other counties to meet him. As he traveled, then they ran into more people. Everybody knew Paul was on the way. He'd been on the way for several months. But they're saying, oh, we did what, Paul? We haven't heard anything about you. We have no opinion. We have not heard anything about you. So they're lying. That's okay. That's okay. So, verse 22, I'm sorry.
But we desire to hear from you what you think. For concerning this sect, we know that it is spoken against everywhere.
So the one thing we do know that this sect, this little culture involved with this little Christianity thing, people talk bad about it everywhere. We do know that much. We haven't heard anything about you, Paul, but we've heard about this Christianity thing. So we want to hear your version of it. We want to hear what you have to say. We just know that it's not a good thing. But we're going to give you a chance to defend yourself. Now again, this is the last opportunity that these Jews in Rome will have for the gospel. Because in a few years, Nero's sending Titus in, and they're going to burn the city down and kill all the Jews. And Jesus warned them. When Jesus says, if you're in the housetop, come down. If you're in the valley, get out. We think that's talking about us today. But he's warning the Jews, there's coming a time, great tribulation is coming on you, and there'll be two in the field, and one's going to be killed. So you got to prepare yourself. He's warning them, but they don't listen. Oh, that's just Jesus. Isn't that Mary's boy? Isn't that right? We like to put people, we just look at them, well, you're just common just like me. So what's coming through your mouth, that can't be the Spirit of God. So Paul will listen to you, but many are called, few choose to listen.
Right.
Okay. So let's go on. Verse 23.
So when they had appointed him a day, many came to him at his lodging, to whom he explained and solemnly testified of the kingdom of God, persuading them concerning Jesus from both the law of Moses and the prophets, from morning till evening.
He did two things. He operated as a teacher and as a preacher. He explained and he testified. Testimony is not teaching.
Amen. That's right.
So he taught and he preached. So those of you, I like good teaching. Okay, but preaching is part of it. I like good preaching. All right, but teaching is part of it. These are two of the ways you like. If you both, oh good, you might be in heaven. So if you like both, then you want the full counsel of God.
That's right.
So people who decide I want to hear teaching, you're wrong. You're denying part of the Bible. People who only want to hear preaching and I don't want to go to Bible study, you're wrong. You're denying part of the Bible. So he explained and testified. He gave his personal testimony. Here's what God did for me. And he lifted me up. And he took me and he raised me from the pit. And he started preaching. And he also just explained the scriptures. So he went through the law of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and then he went to the prophets. Here's what he did, and here's what he said, and he did everything he could. From morning until midnight, we know that Paul can talk a long time.
Right, my cousin, yeah.
But it was important enough for them to listen because it meant their soul. So even though they had dinner waiting and they had Rams tickets, it was important enough to sit there and listen as long as the preacher went. Because it was their soul. I'm sorry.
That persuasion doesn't happen so quick. You have to keep on going layer after layer after layer after layer.
Until you persuade them.
Right.
Then you have to let it go.
That's right.
Because many are called, but only few are going to choose to listen.
That's true.
And then after a while, you're just going your pearls before swine. But since it meant their life, that was why it was so important to him to keep going until he felt the anointing lift.
Yeah.
Then he let it go.
Another
There's
question.
a time to let it go. Yes, sir.
You mean the fellow that fell out the window?
Yeah, we talked about it last week. Yes, how Paul had preached. And he fell, I just remind you, he fell because the windows went all the way from the top to the bottom. They weren't like they are today. Their windows were full windows. So that's why he fell out. Because the preaching had gone home. So try not to fall asleep. You may fall out. So Paul is preaching to them. And verse 24.
And some were persuaded by the things which were spoken, and some disbelieved.
So many are called, few are chosen. Few choose, right? So some are persuaded, and some said, this person's just making stuff up. Now, I want to talk about, does God know who's going to, God knows who's going to accept and who's going to reject. Does God decide who's going to accept and who's going to reject?
No.
There are some scriptures that seem to say that. And so we have to understand that compare scripture by scripture, right? So I took some part of Romans chapter 9 to go through. Because again, he's writing, Paul wrote to the Romans, he's in Rome now. So let's see some things he was saying. Romans chapter 9, verse 2 through 4, then 6 through 8, 6 through 17, and 20 through 23. Okay.
That I have great sorrow and continual grief in my heart. For I could wish that I myself were accursed for Christ for my brothers, my countrymen, according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the service of God, and the promises.
These 6 things we're going to talk about. So Paul says, I have grief in my and continual sorrow for my brethren, because I can see what's about to happen to them. God's about to judge them. And you get a greater judgment. Remember, we've been studying about it's going to be worse for Israel than it is for Sodom and Gomorrah in that day. They're going to get a greater judgment. In fact, we were discussing that it's possible that some people in Sodom and Gomorrah are actually going to make it into heaven. And God judged them before they gave up their salvation. That God rained down judgment on them before they gave up their salvation.
Wow.
Because the Bible said it's better that their flesh, what's that scripture about? Better that the flesh be burnt up than your soul, than you give up your soul. I'm terrible at quoting that scripture, but you know what I'm saying. So this great judgment is about to come on Israel. So I grieve for them because I can see, and there's a reason why the judgment's coming in greater. Because again, we're responsible for what we hear. Better to stay home from Bible study and watch programs all day long. Because the more you go, either it changes you for the good, or God makes you responsible for what you've heard.
That's right.
And He's expecting more of you now. The greater judgment comes on your life because of the calling. Okay, so he says, I wish that myself were cursed from Christ for my brethren. I wish I could switch places with them, and that I was going to hell instead of them. To whom pertain the adoption, that's one, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the service of God, and the promises. Okay, the adoption, Roman adoption. So when you gave birth, as parents, when you gave birth, you had the decision then, as soon as the child came out, whether to keep the child or not. Every Roman citizen. If you knew you weren't going to be able to take care of that child, you gave them up for and put them up for adoption. So that was just normal. Are you keeping the child or are you not? They don't ask that today. They assume to give you the child. But in Rome, that was always a question. Just because the child came out of you didn't mean you were going to keep it. So when you adopted someone, that was an act of love. That was permanent. Better to be adopted than to be given birth, because the parents who knew what might happen. But when you're adopted, that was permanent. Now, for adoption, and listen, they can adopt you at any age. Sometimes the people they were adopted were older than the parents.
Right.
One of the emperors adopted his son. In fact, there's like 6 Roman emperors in a row who the son was older. They were all adopted, and the son was older than the dad, but you would choose your heir. And so once you saw someone and you were going to adopt them, whatever age they were immediately, once you adopted them, they were immediately co-heirs with you of everything that you own. You didn't have to wait for them to die. You didn't have to wait for them to die. That's why the Bible says we're joint heirs with Christ. Once we're adopted in, everything that God has is ours now.
Amen. Amen.
In the slave days, we would say, once we get free from Master Johnson's house, then we're going to get out everything. And then we still carry that mentality into the church. So that we say, by and by, once we get to heaven, then we're going to get to everything. But we have it now. And so as African Americans, we've got to kind of change our thinking and understand we have it now. We don't have to live the way we live. We don't have to do the things that we do. God has given it to us now. We're joint heirs. Because when Paul talks about adoption, and adoption was not a Jewish thing. They didn't have adoption in Jewish circles. If your brother died, like if my brother had passed away, I would automatically be the parent to all of his kids. I wouldn't have to adopt them. That's just automatic. In Jewish culture, you just automatically. But in Roman culture, they had a thing called adoption, where you walk around and you decide who you want to adopt. And they get everything that belongs to you, and mostly you were adopted by very rich people who did not have heirs. So it was exciting to be adopted. So when Paul says we've got adoption with Jesus Christ, like, oh my God, that means some very rich person is about to adopt me. We would all like that. None of us would mind today if a millionaire said, I'm going to adopt you. I don't care what age. We'd say, okay, thank you. Since we have adoption, we have glory, meaning that anointing, that glory that was on Moses. You know how when he saw God, he had to put a veil over his face because the light, the glory was so bright. We got that anointing on us. We have the covenant that he made. That's ours. We have the law belongs to us. Our service to God and the promises. He says all of that is ours now. So all of that, he says, actually belonged to the Jews, were given to the Jews. And because all that was given to them, more is expected of them. So now, verse 6.
But it is not that the word of God has taken no effect, for they are not all Israel who are of Israel.
So just because you were born Israel, born Jewish, doesn't mean that all this comes to you automatically. You have to choose it. You have to choose to be part of God. So if my father was pastor of this church, but that doesn't make me a Christian just because he's a pastor. We a lot of times think
Privilege.
Yeah, there's a privilege. Well, Granny's in the church, Big Mama's in the, and so therefore God's just going to smile at me. Not if you haven't done anything personally yourself to make God a part of your life.
Amen.
So your parents' commitment has nothing to do with you. And that can be frustrating to some parents who are really turned on and they see their kids. Although if you train up a child the way he should go when he's young, when he is older, he will come back to it. Doesn't mean there won't be a middle prodigal son experience. But if you train them up, if you bring them into the church and teach them about Jesus when they're young, there will be a point when maybe he'll come back. Or otherwise God is his life. So there is a special burden on Israel. Not everybody who was born Jewish is really Jewish. And they're like, what? So he goes on to explain.
Nor are they all children because they are the seed of Abraham. But in Isaac your seed shall be called.
So Abraham, who was Abraham's first son? Ishmael. You're going to have to slow down now. You know all the answers now. Like I treat him, like I treat Joey. So Ishmael was the oldest, and in a Jewish culture, not Bible culture, but in Jewish culture, he would have inherited everything from Abraham. Because he's Abraham's first child. But said, no, but Isaac's the one that's going to get it. So it has nothing to do with your culture. We have a culture of christening children. So we'll bring, which is good, I'm not saying anything wrong with it, but we'll bring the child, have the preacher lay hands on it and pray, go, oh good, now I don't have to, now that's it, they're in. No, they're not.
Amen.
And so we live crazy, we're drinking and smoking at home and doing that, and we think that child is in. They're not in. The baby dedication is for us. I'm dedicating myself to bring up that baby. The baby is not dedicated to God. We have to dedicate ourselves to God. Does that make sense? That is for that baby. But we think that. So people love to have them some babies and love to bring them to church, and then you never see that person again until that baby's in jail, and then they're back in the church. Pastor, my baby's in prison. I haven't seen you for 17 years. Since, I prayed for your child 17 years ago. But you thought that was it? So we have certain customs. They had certain customs thinking the oldest child is automatically inheriting everything. Nope. Okay, so go on to the next verse. And Isaac said it should be called verse 8. That is those
who are the children of the flesh. These are not the children of God, but the children of the promise.
Okay, now it goes on and talks about, I was just skipping through, it talks about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob and Esau. Before they were born, the Bible says, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. How is that fair? Tell me why that's fair. Jacob I loved and Esau I hated. God's not fair?
He's fair.
So then it's fair. Explain how it's fair.
Right.
Not you.
Pastor, what is wrong with Esau?
What was wrong with Esau?
Yeah.
Excellent question. So, God, unfortunately for us, sees everything we're ever going to do before we've done it. So he already has an opinion about us in the womb. Before we're even born. He already knows whether we're going to receive him or reject him. He doesn't. God doesn't personally care if you receive him at the age of 80 or 8. He just knows that your heart is eventually going to turn toward him. And once he sees that, he begins to plan certain things for your life. The Bible says, he whom God foreknew, right here in chapter 8, he has predetermined that you be conformed to the image of Christ. You're going to look like Jesus. So he's going to do whatever it takes to you to turn you into another Christian, you know, whatever it takes. If you have to go to jail, if you have to, whatever it takes, he's going to humble you finally until you, because he knew you, that you were going to know him, that you were going to choose him. And again, those people who he knows are going to reject them, he's got a plan for them too. But it may not be the same plan you think. It may not be they're going to go through a bunch of hell.
Right.
In some cases, he lets a person become very famous who's evil. Like Pharaoh. Let him become real famous, because when judgment comes up on that person, that makes God look good. Everybody goes, ooh, God was right. It's bad to do bad things. Look how you get judged. But if you get judged off in the corner somewhere and nobody sees it, that doesn't do God any good. That's not interesting to God, for you to be judged somewhere where nobody saw it. He wants you to be judged in front of everybody. So they can learn. It's mean, but it's correct. It's just. So Esau, he knew before Esau was ever born that Esau was going to reject him for some oatmeal.
Yeah.
And he knew that Jacob would lie and cheat and deceive in order to get that promise of God. He liked the fact that Jacob wanted the promise of God. He didn't like the fact that he was lying and cheating to get it. But he valued the promise of God, and Esau didn't. So in the womb, he's saying, I love Jacob even though he was going to be a deceiver because he wanted me. And Esau in the womb, I'm already frustrated with him before he's ever born.
Yes. Also, before they were born, Jacob had he was trying to pull Esau back so he could be first. Remember that there was
that's why they gave him that name. He's a supplanter. And Jacob tries to take your place. So even in the womb, Jacob's trying to come out first. That's just who he is.
Yeah, he's a leader.
So we are who we are when you're born. So if you parents have had a couple children, the first one came out a certain way, and maybe they were all giggly, and the second one came out and it was all fussy, and you thought, what's wrong with that baby? You thought all babies were all giggly, but they all have their own personalities when they come out. Some of them come out all angry, and some of them come out all happy, and that's who they are.
They all come out.
You are who you are, and God doesn't have a problem with that, as long as whatever you are, you use for Him. And, you know, if you like to complain that people aren't saved. That's okay if you're complaining.
One more thing I want to add to that.
Yes, sir.
On Esau, he also had a problem because he didn't have enough tenacity to fight for what he thought was right. Then he wanted to fight. And also the history talks about him having a pride problem. He didn't go to God and really actually be determined to do what he was supposed to do.
Well, he wanted to fight once he thought something important was taken away from him.
Right.
But he didn't really value it. He's fighting because you took that.
Right.
He didn't really want it. He's just upset because it was taken. And that's different.
Right.
Okay, so let's look at 16.
So that it is not of him who wills, nor of him who does, but of God who bestows mercy.
So now this is interesting scripture we want to understand. For those people who to get saved, in order to be part of the chosen, in order to be saved, it doesn't matter. It's not of him who wills or him who runs. It's not how much you want it or how hard you try. It's not on us to save ourselves. So God is fighting with the people who think they can save themselves. As long as I give to charity, as long as I'm saying God, he's like, no. It's God showing mercy. It's you understanding you're a sinner. That's what's going to get you to heaven. I need Jesus. I am a sinner. I can't make it in heaven without him. It's not you trying hard, or it's not your will or your effort that will get you into heaven. The Jews that Paul is fighting with right now think, as long as I do all the sacrifices and I do all those stuff, I'll make it to heaven. As long as I go to church twice a week, or as long as I pray. We have a set of things that we think, as long as I do these things, I'll be in heaven. That's why people show up to church on Easter and Mother's Day and Christmas. I went to church 3 times a year. God should be happy. Nope. And he doesn't care how many times you go. You're just going to fulfill an obligation. You're not going because you want Jesus. You just have a checklist of things that we think will get us into heaven. Right, the CB Christians. So, yes, sir?
Remember that scripture, the guy said, I gave all to the poor, and I do that.
Right.
He gave a list, and Jesus said, go get rid of it.
Yes, he did.
Go get all the things you've done and give it yourself. He couldn't
You couldn't do it.
Couldn't do
right.
it.
I've fulfilled the law. I've done everything. No, you haven't really. I'll prove it to you. Give all everything to the poor. Uh-oh. I haven't fulfilled the law.
Right.
Because I can't,
Take your heart.
So we think, well, I've done enough to get into heaven. So it says it's not based on what you've done. Not if he who wills or he who runs. And the Romans invented marathons and all that stuff like that. So just using that metaphor. It's not how hard, it's not about your desire, it's not about your effort, it's about the mercy of God. That's how you're going to get in. Okay, go ahead. Verse 17.
For the scripture says to the Pharaoh, for this very purpose I have raised you up, that I may show my power in you, that my name may be declared known.
So here's somebody who from the beginning God knew would reject him. So he tells Pharaoh, that's why I actually raised you up. I gave you that kingdom. I made you this powerful person so I could bring you down in front of everybody. There's not any culture on earth who does not know the story of Moses and Pharaoh. He's one of the most famous people who's ever lived. God, because people always know that if you reject me, this is you, the fate of Pharaoh. You won't be able to get to heaven and go, I didn't know if you sinned, you got trouble. Yes, you know the story of Moses and Pharaoh? Yeah, well, then you know that if you reject God, you will lose and you'll be drowned in the Red Sea. So this is why I raised you up. So, interestingly enough, the person that God knows is going to choose him, he may put them through a whole bunch of stuff because he has to break them so that they eventually will do what their heart is telling them to do. The person who might reject him, God may shower riches on them. Just so when they're famous, he embarrasses them in front of everybody. That their fall is big. So you cannot look at somebody's life and go, oh, God loves this person, God hates that person. We don't know why people are where they are. You can't look at somebody who's homeless and, well, God must be judging you. Oh no, God may be just about to use that person. You don't know. You have no idea. That person may be more committed to God. That rich person that you think God loves, no, God set them up for the fall. So, you know what I'm saying? Or somebody can be rich and God's using them. I'm just saying, we can't judge. Only God looks at the heart, not us. Were you going to say something?
My father-in-law, he wasn't a great fan of me when I got married to his daughter. I told you how he's changing and changing.
Yeah.
So the other day, my air conditioner in my house went out. So, I'm going to fix budget for a while.
Right.
And I was out of work for a while. So, surprisingly, he built a new house and he's selling his other house. So he's staying in my house. He's at my house.
Okay.
So then he said, so the air went out, and he just recently had cancer, everybody knew, so he doesn't like cold. So I kept saying, oh my God, how much is this air conditioner? It's going to be thousands of dollars. The last person said it's going to be you. Long story short, so Rebecca called me and said, guess what my father's doing? I said, well, he just called the air conditioner man. And I said, this is a man that's anti-Christ.
Right.
And slowly but surely he's talking about other stuff. And I'm not trying to convince him because,
no.
He's a cusser and a argumentative person forever. So I let him say what he had to do and go on. And lately he's getting softer and softer and softer and softer. And my sister-in-law said to Rebecca, she said, you know what? I don't go to church, but you guys are Christians. You know, in the area, I'm not saying I'm great.
No,
I'm saying, but knowing that you don't have to fight another person.
Right.
Because the wealth is going to come from the wicked.
Right, and God will work on it.
He'll give it to you, right.
God
So I got
will
everything.
work on it.
I got a happy unit.
Right.
He said, call him on the second piece. You know, I took it.
Right, so there are, again, there could be some rich people, God has blessed them and loves them. I'm not saying God's mad at the rich.
That's right.
I'm just saying, you can't look at that as a sign of whether God is pleased with somebody or not.
Right.
God may be giving them a bunch of riches just so they can fix your ignorance. You know, you never know why God is blessing someone or not. We think it's a blessing. It may even be a curse to that person. Right, so you just never know. God is at the heart. God is at the heart, and that's what he's concerned about. So he's talking to the Jews, and Paul's just saying, they're going to end up in hell, and it frustrates me, it saddens me. But they are not choosing, even though the gospel came to them first, even though didn't my Lord deliver Daniel and all this, and even though God did all this for them, they are rejecting. And because of that, God's going to judge them. Yes, sir.
He says, I could wish that I myself were a person of Christ in my brethren.
Yeah, I wish I could change place.
Is that like hyperbole?
Yes.
Does he really mean that?
No, he means if I could trade place, like Jesus, if I could trade place, like if I could go to hell and then all the Jews would be saved, that would be great. I would sacrifice if that was how God could work it out.
But the other thing that comes in.
Listen, there's mamas who, when they see their kids sick,
yeah,
Jesus, give me the sickness so that my child, they would take the cancer for their child.
That's right. Yeah, that's temporary though.
Well, no, cancer might hurt and kill you.
No. I mean,
but you mean permanently in hell?
Yeah.
Right. But he can say it because it's not going to happen.
Well, yeah.
But he can still think that would make sense to him. If I could trade and all Jews would be saved, that he's just saying, I wish it could work out that way. He knows that it can't. It's okay that you can wish that all you want. He knows that it can't. So, but he's not kidding them.
Right.
Okay. So, let's look at verse 22.
What if God, wanting to show his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction?
So what if God, he's just saying, let's say God, he wants to make his power known. He endures with much long suffering the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction. Those people who have already decided that they're going to reject him, what if he puts up with them for a long time? Now, when I get to heaven and I correct God, I'm going to take God out to lunch, and I'm going to say, here's where you messed up, God. You take too long to judge the wicked, and it makes them think that they're getting away with stuff. You need to judge them right away. And he's like, no, because judgment is hell.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put up with this for as long as possible. I am trying to give them a chance to repent. So what if God, in order to do two things, to show his wrath and his power, puts it up with for a long time? There are people getting away with stuff. They're not getting away with that.
That's right.
But we're watching them, oh my Lord, that person's got away with that, and they got away with this. And so what if God, he's long suffering because he's trying to give them a chance to repent. On Judgment Day, they will not be able to stand before him and say, well, I didn't know, and you didn't give me a chance. And yes, I did. There's 50 years I put up with that. Gave you great power and riches, and now judgment has come. So he deals with he puts up with the vessels prepared for destruction. Verse 23.
And that he might make known the riches of his glory and the vessels of mercy, which he had prepared beforehand.
So there's the vessels of wrath, and there are the vessels of mercy. So there's the righteous and the wicked. So he puts up with them, and then when destruction comes with them, he takes all that money and he gives those riches to the vessels of mercy, who've been waiting for their deliverance. So he says, what if God is doing that? Because he's saying Because the Jews are bragging, like, we've had the law, we've had the prophets, look what God has done for us. So I know it's on the heart. It's like, you know what? I think God's just been putting up with you all these years. And he's about to rain down his wrath. He's about to make a big switch, Jews, from the Jews to the Gentiles. You are in trouble and more trouble because you know so much. So judgment's going to come on you greatly. And again, it's the same with us today. We're responsible. If you're raised in the church and heard and all this stuff, and then you act ugly, there's a greater judgment than some people who've never known. You know, we were talking, I don't know if it was, we talking about the prostitute last Sunday or last Wednesday? No, it was the prostitute. Can't remember. It's all just one long time. So the prostitute, who came into the church, who may have never heard that, you know, much about the gospel, and God's not mad at her. Right. He's mad at the businessman who was raised in church and knows better and is acting, you know. So we're responsible for what we know. That's right. And Paul is warning the Jews, you know too much, and so therefore your judgment is going to be great. Verse 24.
Even us whom he called, not the Jews only, also the Gentiles.
So what if this is his plan? Because the call goes out to everybody, Jews and Gentiles. The Jews got it first. But what if he's about to reject them? What if this terrible thing's about to happen and he's about to start ministering to the Gentiles? What if that's what's going on? That's why judgment hasn't come on you yet, but it's coming. And so I feel sorry for the people who have heard warnings. You need to stop acting so ugly. You need to stop being so mean. You need to stop being so... just because judgment hasn't come yet doesn't mean it's not coming eventually. What if God's just giving you time to repent? Maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe God is just slow. Maybe God is just slow. But it doesn't mean it's not coming. Right. So I suppose I'm wrong. Maybe God's just being merciful. That's what Paul's telling the Jews right now. But that's what God's telling us. Just because you've been getting away from it for a while doesn't mean eventually you won't get caught. So maybe God is just being merciful. Don't look at it as mercy. Not that he doesn't know, not that he's not looking, not that he's excusing it, but he's just giving you a chance to repent. Amen. So look at it and say, wow. Not I got away with it, like, wow, God was merciful. Here's my chance to change. Let me change before the judgment comes. Because actually God has been merciful. I should have been dead long ago. I'm driving 70, whatever the thing, whatever our thing, people have warned you, you need to get those tires fixed, or you should slow down, or what I'm saying, whatever the warning is. It's not always you've been evil. But whatever the warning is, just because judgment didn't happen doesn't mean it's not coming. And that's what Paul's telling the Jews here. So he's preaching to these Jews, preaches till midnight, and then Acts chapter 28, verse 25 through 26.
So when they agree among themselves, they departed after Paul said one more.
So this is what Paul said to them, which really pissed them off. Go ahead.
Spirit spoke right to Isaiah the prophet to our father, saying, go to the people and say, hearing you will hear, and shall not understand.
So go to them and say, so Paul said to them, because they're listening to him, but they're not buying it. And so Paul says to them, okay, remember Isaiah said, when you go to the people, you'll hear, but you're not going to get it. And that's on you. It doesn't mean what I'm saying is wrong. It means that you're hearing the right thing and you're not going to understand it. So Pastor, we can preach to people all day long. Some of them are not going to get it. And at a certain point, we have to stop. Right? Okay. And then let them go. And let them go. Because those are the people who in their hearts have decided, this is who I am, I don't care. That's right. Right. You have a reprobate heart. Larry used to talk about this, that people, you can become just dull of hearing. Your heart becomes hard. Because you rejected it so much that nothing works now. That knife is dull now. It won't cut anymore. And your heart just won't hear it. And you can trap them in the church for 2 months. Just look you in the face. So, yes, sir.
Is it because you believe what you want to believe?
Right. You've already had your mind made up.
Had your mind made up.
You're called, but only if you choose to believe. Only if you choose to listen and say, that might be me. Let me check my heart.
So that's what I was just going to, that's saying, there's none so blind as those who will not see, and none so deaf who will not hear. That's
right, who choose not to see, choose not to hear.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Like King Pharaoh in the scriptures always misinterpreted, and God hardened his heart.
Right.
The reading I learned is God take his hands off of him and allow the real personality to come out.
Right.
Because he intentionally, he really didn't, when God hardened him, it was this man, he was under the grace of God for a while. But God said, okay, I know what you want. I want everybody to see who you are. And
right.
This man did not want him to go free. Even when he doesn't go, he wanted to go back and get him. So that was his main intention. That was his heart.
The quality is already in our heart.
Right.
Either have a heart of stone or a heart of wax. Either clay or wax.
Right.
And when the sun shines on us, it either melts it or hardens it.
Amen.
But it's not the choice of the sun. God's not choosing one or the other. You either are born with, and you decided, and you have that heart of clay, or you have that heart that can be melted. And when God does what he does, for some hearts it's going to melt them, some it's going to harden them. But God's not choosing one over the other. We have always made the choice. And God, unfortunately, knows that before you're born.
Right.
And he's already made decisions about things that are going to happen in your life before you're born. And so the thing, if you're like Paul, like hopefully all of us, when you look at the things happening in your life, you say, okay, I know this is for my good. So how can I be a threat to the devil today? This is for my good. Whatever it is. Okay, my car broke down. Maybe when the guy shows up, I can tow it, I can witness to him. There's some good from this. God wasn't absent. He didn't go on vacation and come back and go, oh, I didn't know about your car, sorry. This happened for a reason. And I know it's all going to work together for good. Because I've already committed. So now I know everything, step by step, going into my life is going to be something that shapes me and draws me closer to him. And so you can rejoice the whole time. You can be thankful the whole time. Lord, I don't understand why this happened, but I know you know why it happened. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just going to praise you. And so if we are those who have a heart of wax, then we don't have to worry about our lives. We don't have to worry about it. We just look at every situation and say, okay, your will, just show me how I can improve, what I need to do, and what you're doing in the situation. And so Paul is making his last, and we just have one more lesson in Acts. He makes his last appeal, and then, like I said, judgment comes on the Jews, and God destroys Rome, burns the city down with all the Jews in it. Because there's a price to pay for rejecting God. But just because he's long in coming doesn't mean he's not showing up.
Amen.
Scott, you have to all know that. If you don't mind, we all bow our heads. Father, we thank you.